Was I wrong to walk away? Tell me honestly, if you would have stayed after your own father texted you, mere hours after you'd been in a serious accident. Can't this wait? We're busy. That text, those few cold, dismissive words, felt like a physical blow, worse than any of the injuries I sustained. It was the moment I realized I was fundamentally alone in the world, despite having a family. 3 weeks later, I showed up at their perfect, manicured door, not with flowers, but with a stack of carefully prepared papers that changed everything for good. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I just handed him the folder and watched the color drain from his face. But to truly understand the depth of that moment, and why those papers were the only form of communication left, I need to take you back, far back, to the beginning of this lifetime of emotional neglect. My name is Clara, and I grew up in a household where performance was paramount. My father, Robert, is a successful corporate lawyer, and my mother, Diane, is a high-powered real estate broker. Their world revolved around appearances: the immaculate house, the right cars, the expensive private school tuition, and, most importantly, the image of the perfect, thriving family. I wasn't just their daughter, I was a key component of their brand. My brother, Michael, 3 years older than me, was the golden child. He was naturally athletic, outgoing, and effortlessly charismatic, fitting perfectly into the social circles my parents cultivated. I was the opposite. I was quiet, introverted, and excelled in academic subjects like history and literature, things my father often dismissed as unmarketable hobbies. This subtle but persistent favoritism defined my childhood. If Michael won a soccer trophy, there was a huge party. If I won an academic scholarship, it was met with a curt, "Good. Now focus on your college applications." Everything I did was measured against Michael's easy success and my parents' professional standing. This created a chasm between us, a sense of conditional love where I always felt like I had to earn my place at the table, while Michael simply inherited his. The expectation was exhausting, and over the years, I learned to keep my struggles, my victories, and my very self, very small. I lived my life striving for a level of perfection that would finally elicit genuine, unconditional pride from my parents, but it never came. Every achievement was simply the required baseline. Every mistake was a catastrophic failure that reflected poorly on them. The dynamic worsened as I got older. When I chose a less financially lucrative path in museum archival science, my father was openly disappointed, constantly pressing me to pursue law or finance. He'd introduce me to his colleagues and immediately launch into an apology for my career choice, saying, "She's just going through a phase, she'll come around." It was humiliating. Meanwhile, Michael, whose own career path was marked by instability and frequent investments that often required significant loans from our parents, was always met with encouraging pats on the back and renewed financial support. This financial lifeline was constant proof of Mark's favored status. They didn't just support his endeavors, they lived vicariously through them, seeing his risks, taking as boldness, while my sensible, stable choices were seen as cowardice. Over time, I naturally distanced myself. I moved a couple of states away for my job, keeping contact minimal but respectful. I'd call for holidays, send cards, and show up for major family events, always with a polite smile, but my heart wasn't in it. I had built a life for myself, a small but meaningful existence where my work was appreciated, and I had close friends who saw me, not a reflection of my parents' ambitions. My apartment was modest, but it was mine, and I loved the independence it represented. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, something my parents never seemed to value until they needed someone to fix a problem. The setting for the ultimate confrontation was a Tuesday afternoon, about 6 months ago. I was driving home from work when a driver, completely distracted by their phone, blew through a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. It was terrifying. The impact was violent, the airbags deployed, and everything went silent, save for a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I was trapped. Luckily, my injuries weren't life-threatening, but they were serious. A fractured wrist, several cracked ribs, and severe whiplash. The first person I called, after the police and my boss, was my best friend, Sarah, who rushed to the hospital. The second call, hours later, after I was stabilized in the emergency room, was to my parents. I didn't want to worry them, but I knew I needed to inform them of the situation and the surgery that would be required for my wrist. I spoke to my mother first. Her reaction was the typical, surface-level concern, the kind you'd offer a distant acquaintance. "Oh dear, Clara, that sounds rough. Are you going to be all right?" I assured her I was, and she passed the phone to my father. I explained the details, the fault of the other driver, and the need for a week in the hospital. His response wasn't a question about my pain or my fear, but a practical, managerial assessment. "Well, make sure you get the absolute top-tier personal injury lawyer, Clara. Don't let them nickel and dime us. This could reflect poorly on your insurance premiums." I managed to contain my sigh and told him I would handle it. Then things got worse. My surgery was scheduled for the next morning. It was late evening when I decided to send a brief, final update text to both of them, just before the strong medication started making me woozy. It read, "Surgery set for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Wrist fracture is complex. Thanks for listening. I'll let you know when I wake up." Simple, informative, and polite. Sarah was sitting right next to me, holding my good hand. A few minutes passed, and my phone buzzed with a reply. It was from my father. I opened it, my eyes blurry, expecting a generic "good luck" or "be strong." Instead, the screen displayed those 6 soul-crushing words, asterisk asterisk, "Can't this wait, we're busy." Asterisk asterisk, I didn't even need to ask what busy meant. I knew. It meant they were at some high society function, perhaps a gala or a corporate dinner, where a public display of worry over their injured, distant daughter would be inconvenient and unnecessary. My accident, my pain, my very real fear about the surgery, was a social inconvenience, a logistical hurdle that was interrupting their important, perfect life. I showed the text to Sarah. Her face crumpled with a mixture of shock and protective anger. I didn't cry. I felt nothing, which was the most terrifying realization of all. The well of emotion had simply run dry. The years of hoping, of trying to earn their love, had finally hit rock bottom. In that hospital bed, staring at the cold screen, I realized I was done. I was officially severing the emotional umbilical cord. I didn't reply. I muted the conversation, turned off my phone, and went into surgery the next morning with Sarah as my only family. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stood your ground and fought for an apology? Would you have simply faded into the background and ghosted them? Or would you have gone for the nuclear option, the final, undeniable act of separation? I truly want to know what you think. During my recovery, which was slow, painful, and entirely supported by Sarah and my wonderful friends, not a single phone call or card from my parents. I made a plan. I had a lot of time to think. With nothing but a cast on my arm and the cold sting of that text message for company. I realized that simply disappearing wouldn't work. My father, the lawyer, would eventually track me down, not out of concern, but out of a desire to control the narrative. I needed a formal, clean break that he, the man of papers and legalities, would be forced to respect. I called my own lawyer, not the one for the accident, but a separate, specialized family attorney. I explained the years of emotional neglect, the favoritism, and the final, devastating text. I told him I needed to cut off all ties, financially and emotionally, in a way that left no room for argument or future interference. My lawyer, a compassionate but fiercely professional woman named Evelyn, listened intently and then asked me one crucial question. "Do you rely on them for anything, Clara?" And that's when I remembered. The trust fund. When I turned 18, my parents had set up a substantial trust fund for both Michael and me, designated to be fully accessible on our 30th birthdays. I was 29. The purpose, as stated in the documents I had signed years ago, was to provide us with financial stability. But for my parents, it was always a tool of control, a gilded cage. I had always viewed it as a safety net, but now I saw it as the last remaining leverage they had over me. I instructed Evelyn to execute two things simultaneously. First, an official, notarized declaration of separation, stating my decision to sever all familial and emotional ties, requesting no further contact, and clearly citing the long history of emotional neglect. This wasn't a legal document to stop contact, but a powerful moral and emotional statement designed to hit my father where it hurt, his public image. Second, I authorized Evelyn to legally assign my entire portion of the trust fund to my brother, Michael, as soon as it became legally available in 6 months. This was the nuclear option. I didn't want their money. The thought of taking their money felt dirty, a final, transactional validation of their conditional love. By giving it to Michael, I was permanently removing myself from the financial battlefield and cutting the last strand of obligation, simultaneously exposing their favoritism to him in a devastating way. I had a stable career, a good life, and my financial independence was worth more than any inheritance. Evelyn was stunned by the decision, but agreed to execute it meticulously. 3 weeks after my accident, I was finally out of the cast and strong enough to travel. I drove my rental car to my parents' house, the picture perfect, stately home that always felt more like a museum than a residence. I arrived precisely at 5:00 p.m., the time I knew my father would be home from work, having his inner scotch in the formal living room. I didn't call ahead. I walked up the stone steps, rang the bell, and waited. My father, Robert, opened the door, dressed immaculately in a silk robe, a glass in his hand. He looked momentarily shocked to see me, a woman slightly thinner, paler, and still bearing the faint marks of the accident. "Clara, what on earth are you doing here? Why didn't you call? We were about to—" he started, already annoyed by the breach of protocol. I cut him off, my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. "I'm not staying, Dad. I just came to deliver this." I held up the thick manila folder Evelyn had prepared. I didn't step inside. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't even meet his eye. I just pushed the folder into his hands. His lawyer's instinct took over. He looked at the folder, then back at me, frowning. "What is this? A settlement draft?" I shook my head, my gaze finally locking with his. "No, it's my resignation." He opened the folder right there in the doorway. He first saw the declaration of separation, the formal language detailing the end of the relationship, citing irreparable emotional harm. His brow furrowed in confusion, But then he turned the page and saw the legal assignment document for the trust fund. That's when it happened. His confident, lawyerly mask shattered. His face didn't just drain. It collapsed into a sickly, ashen hue. He stumbled back a half step, grasping the doorframe. The realization of what I had done, the complete, utter financial and personal abandonment, hit him harder than any argument ever could. For him, money was the ultimate proof of worth, and I was throwing his proof back in his face while simultaneously severing his most important asset, his family image. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with genuine panic for the first time in my life. "Clara, what is this? You can't be serious. That money is yours. You earned it." His voice was a panicked whisper. I simply responded, "No, Dad. I earned my independence. The money is yours to control or Michael's to waste. It doesn't belong to me anymore." I took a breath, the relief washing over me like a cleansing wave. When I was in the hospital, scared and alone, you texted me asking if my pain could wait because you were busy. That text was the final bill for years of conditional love. Consider this my payment. I paused one last time, making sure my final words sank in. "I am officially out of your life, Dad. I wish you and Mom well." I turned my back, walked down the steps, and drove away, leaving him standing there, holding the documents that proved he had lost his daughter forever. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. The silence was absolute for a week. Then, the frantic calls started, not from my father, but from my mother, crying and begging me to reconsider. I didn't answer. Evelyn handled everything. She received a flurry of aggressive legal letters from my father, all of which she professionally dismissed, reminding him that the trust fund transfer was legal, irrevocable upon my 30th birthday, which was fast approaching, and that his attempts to contact me constituted harassment. The family facade was completely dismantled. The full, cold truth of their priorities was laid bare for my extended family and their social circles to see. I heard through the grapevine that my father had tried to spin the story, claiming I was unstable and had a mental breakdown, but the copy of the Declaration of Separation and the clear financial transfer made the truth undeniable. Michael, surprisingly, reached out. He was confused, stunned by the massive, unexpected windfall, and slightly guilty. I simply told him, "It was never about the money, Michael. It was about being free. We haven't fully reconciled, but we have started a tentative, more honest communication." As for my parents, they finally got what they wanted: quiet. A quiet life where they no longer have to worry about my inconvenient existence. I got what I needed: peace. I don't see them, I don't talk to them, and I no longer wait for a text that will never come. I am healthy, happy, and truly free. So that's the end of my story. It's a painful truth, but sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to cut ties with the people who consistently hurt you, even if they're family. I stood up for my worth and my self-respect, and I don't regret the price of that freedom. If you were on my side and believe I made the right choice to put myself first, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on my act of permanent separation in the comments section below. I want to know if you think I gave up too much, or if I finally found everything. I'll see you all in the next story.